players, the personalities who come from around the world to play professional soccer in the United States.
In a world where some call it football, football, or soccer, they dare to call it foosball. One thinks New York is blue, the other thinks New York is red. Soccer in America from a German perspective. Let them put some sauerkraut on your hot dog and join them for the Schnitzel Boys USA Hour.
Yes! I always had the Max Bretos yes in there to bring us in. Welcome to Schnitzel Night. Welcome to USA Hour. Whoop, hold on. Hold on. Here we go. I got it on loop. Pause it.
In the United States.
And pause. I always forget to take it off loop. My usual co-host does the tech, so my tech is very, like you said, very artisan, very homegrown here. We're not the best at tech. But anywho, Bjorn Schnitzel's out of town. I have myself a very, very special guest, his Schnitzel Boys debut. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Schnitzel. Yay!
Hello.
How you doing, Pat?
It's a thrill to be here. I am a longtime listener, and I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. How are you, Stefan? I have not seen you in person in many a year at this point.
I know. When was the last time we saw each other? Was it that time we went to that bar in Midtown that one time? I remember you hopped on the Long Island Railroad back to Queens. Forgot when that was. I don't know.
There is the chance of that, or it had to have been more recent than USA Turkey.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that crazy day. Yeah.
Yeah, I always remember that because that was we went to Red Bull Arena and that was a prep game for the 2014 World Cup.
Yeah.
And I remember that being such a fun day. And that might have been the first U.S. national team game I ever saw live, maybe. I think.
It's the only one I've ever gotten to see live. And so
I'm
very grateful to my neighbor who offered us tickets.
Right.
Yes.
How's he doing? You still talk to him? He was a real cool guy.
We're in touch. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We're in touch. We're no longer neighbors. I guess we are. We're still in the same neighborhood, but right. I don't see him that often. We keep in touch through our pizza guy.
Amazing.
Very New York.
Keep in touch
thing.
Through a pizza guy. I mean, conversationally, or like when he delivers you a pizza, he gives you an update of the other guy, and when he delivers him, he gives you an update of you, something like that.
Exactly. That's exactly
just like how my mom does with my family. That's your pizza guy relationship. Because
the
only stuff I know about my family is when my mom gives me the news. She's like, your sister this, your dad this. I only hear from her. She's the one who communicates it to all of us. So the direct connection is limited. Let's just put it that way. Very cool. Very cool. So I'll give you a quick rundown. So, Pat, you used to be a huge Chicago Fire fan back in the day. Now, that's what I'm going to ask you on the pod. Are you still a Chicago Fire fan?
As much as a human can be who has lived in New York for now 20 some odd years, I certainly still follow the Fire game in, game out. And that is an act of will and strength at this point, I have to say.
Yeah.
It is really tough. And because of my love for the Fire, I absolutely ended up adopting the Red Bulls because so many of my favorite Fire personalities ended up here in one capacity or another.
Will Monconde, one of my favorites. Juan Carlos Osorio.
That's right.
Bob Bradley. Bob Bradley was the coach when they transferred from Metro Stars to Red Bulls.
And that's when I fell in love. I fell in love with the Bob Bradley Chicago Fire. I fell in love with soccer through the Bob Bradley Chicago Fire, I should say. And and then eventually our central midfield pairing from that time, Jesse Marsh and then Chris Armas. Our assistant coach, Dennis Hamlet,
Jim Curtin, right, was involved?
Curtin
part of that team?
If you want to talk, the seeds that were planted for American coaching and executive blah 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 during the late 90s, early 2000s in Bob Bradley's garden and the AstroTurf in Naperville. Josh Wolf, Jim Curtin, and Martian Armas, and then
Beasley.
John Thorrington was there. Yeah,
All
I mean
right, from
DeMarcus
LAFC.
Beasley. Yeah. Oh, and Beasley, that's right. He owns
He runs Indiana
Fort Wayne now
or
too.
Fort Wayne. Yeah,
Yeah,
his
yeah.
hometown
And
club. Yeah.
yeah. And then John
So,
Thorrington and there's one other, Carlos Bocanegra.
oh, that's right,
Uh,
at Atlanta, who
so
just stepped down from his Atlanta tenure, I believe.
yeah,
And there's
yeah.
been a lot of pro Carlos Bocanegra stories out in the ether. One or two negative ones of his time in Chicago, but now's not the time to bring that up, I guess.
Exactly.
They're just sharing positive stories. He's also the reason Marcelo Bielsa will never step foot in the United States ever again, or whatever. I don't know if you ever read that. I don't know if you read that
No.
athletic story.
Okay, I'm very curious about that. And
Before Atlanta hired Tata, they went for Marcelo Bielsa, and they're recording him, and they're like, Carlos Bocanegra scheduled a meeting. It's like, it's you, man, it's you. And then I think he just ghosted him. I think he like skipped the meeting or something, just ghosted him. And then they went and got Tata instead, or something happened where Marcelo Bielsa, who was essentially promised the project, who really wanted to do it, then Carlos Bocanegra kind of ghosted him, and then it fell out, and then it never happened. And now he burned a bridge with Marcelo Bielsa.
Wow,
which
for our entire soccer culture.
Nah, just for Atlanta. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. I think maybe just for the Atlanta, maybe just between him and Marcelo Bielsa. But yeah, so this podcast usually it's a Rebels fan, NYCFC fan, sort of being polite to each other. So do you? Right. So you still Chicago? Are you? How's your relationship with the New York clubs?
Well, that's the thing, because I raised children. One of them is an absolute Red Bulls fanatic, right. And so we're going to the game this weekend, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
Yeah, and so
did you go to the game last weekend?
Did not.
Was that, no, that was in Chicago. That was in Chicago. Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's so. It was Chicago Fire goes up in the 75th minute, and at this point, I am just conditioned to expecting for us to concede around the 89th. I mean, that's just what is going to happen. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen though this time, which was a huge surprise to me, and something I'm very grateful for.
But what was going to guarantee to happen, like any New York Red Bulls fan, is I saw the lineups out, and I was like, "Oh, Tom Barlow's going to score on us." That's all. He didn't score on anybody, but the way it works in Metroland is your former players always do really well against you when it's time. And Tom Barlow, sure enough, got himself the goal that I knew was going to happen. It's like, I couldn't have it any other way. That's so Metro. That's Tom Barlow. A great servant to us, but we sold him well, and I'm very happy that Chicago Fire took him off our hands, but he was there to punish us. And I guess rightfully so. I don't know. But it's fine. I just kind of want to bring the Bob. I was thinking about this earlier today, going back again. So just to be, you're a big Chicago Fire fan, but through your family now, New York Red Bulls a fan these days.
Yeah.
So that sort of brings up two topics for me. One is based on a news story that we saw, I believe, today or yesterday, where the incomparable Mikey Varas has just been appointed the brand new head coach of San Diego FC.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to ask Pat about this. Because I don't know, when you were a Chicago fan, you were a fan back in the beginning, right? Like, were you around when Bob Bradley was announced and all that stuff? Do you remember all that?
Not when he was announced, but I fell in love with the game through going to his team in the starting 99. I didn't get to see us win MLS Cup, although I was at a U.S. Open Cup final, which was a ball about 2 years later. And so it was just sort of going to Soldier Field out of curiosity in the beginning. But yes,
well, I'm just curious because like when Bob Bradley was announced, he was the Princeton coach and he was Bruce's assistant. That was his entire he had no professional experience. So I wonder if there was a disappointment at that time. So if I'm a San Diego FC fan, and sure enough, I went on the Reddit to confirm, this is a very disappointing hire, right? It's like, well, he was an academy coach.
Yeah.
And then he was the U20 coach, not of note, by the way. The U20s lost in Mexico under him.
Right.
And no, not under him, but they didn't do amazing under him. And then
they won the matches they were supposed to win. Yeah.
And then they just had two of the worst U.S. friendlies we've seen in years under him. And now he's the head coach. That's his professional experience. So it's just like, okay. And it's a franchise, like a new franchise. And there's a lot to a new franchise. Ziggy did really well with Seattle. Bruce did great with DC. Bob did great with Chicago. Bob did great with LAFC. There were rumors where Bob was going to do it again at San Diego, which I thought would have been an excellent hire.
I was hearing that rumor too. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
But they landed. No, sorry. They landed on Mikey Veras. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
It is a big shock for all the reasons you were talking about. And the thing to compare it with Bradley in 98, or actually in 97, right? He would have been hired for the Fire, is comparing a completely different universe, right? Because at that time there were 10 full-time professional teams in North America. There were 10 teams. So the idea of hiring a coach who didn't have professional experience, well, there weren't a lot that did. The league had been going 2 years at that point. And so yes, there was a hugely successful manager hit the ground running, hire his top assistant. That makes a lot of sense in the ecosystem of MLS. At that time when still plenty of players were getting, making considerably less than a USL Championship player would expect to make nowadays.
Right.
So I get that at that time in American soccer culture at the time, it makes zero sense today in this league with not only the resources, but this is a completely different world, and to bring in a manager that hasn't managed professionals yet as your very first guy.
Right. And this is also, speaking of different universes, this is a universe with buzz. Like San Diego, people are talking about San Diego. And when they signed Chucky Lozano, it's like there's buzz, something's happening. Back in the old days, there was no press. It's like, there's a new team. The diehards knew about it, but the milieu of the American mainstream didn't know anything about it. It was very niche. And now there's buzz. So you'd think they'd have a bigger name in there, for something like that.
Yeah. And just put yourself in Chucky Lozano's boots, showing up for training on the first day.
Right.
And here's this guy, I mean, clearly has impressed a lot of people, I don't know if you listen to the CBS Call It What You Want.
I heard Call It What You Want. They mentioned he had a huge rise because he got the U.S. men's national team job. Then he got the San Diego job. It's like a lot of people wanted those jobs.
Yeah.
So, he's got photos on someone or something. He's got photos or something.
Well, and, Brian McBride says great things about him. This is a great guy. He's one to keep your eye on. All of that. We have absolutely no evidence of it. And in San Diego's seat, how many coaches are out there that have experience in this league? Yeah. So
maybe Landon Donovan should have gotten the post. I don't know. I would have been maybe more into that. That would have been more exciting for me to read into. So the other topic I want to talk about kind of is I am a New York Red Bulls diehard because I was an MLS diehard before I lived in an MLS market. And then when I moved to New York, I made a conscious decision to be a Red Bulls fan because I was there. And then I was there during the winter playoffs. Sorry, were you going to say something, Pat?
Oh, well, that was before NYCFC, wasn't it? When you moved to New York?
Yeah. I moved it was 2008. 2008. Yeah, I was excited just to be like, oh, now I can be a New York Red Bulls fan. And I was living on Long Island at the time. I wasn't even living in New York City proper. So I drive when Red Bull Arena opened, which essentially my first season was the first season at Red Bull Arena. I could drive to the stadium from Long Island back and stuff. And then I was there for the snow playoffs and just grabbed my heart, And I think of Jack Nicholson sitting on the sidelines at those LA Lakers games, who told the great Adam Sandler once, because he's also from New York, big New York Knicks fan. He's like, just let go. Just because I'm here in SoCal and I just got two of the best MLS. Like, I've got two great franchises right in my backyard. And a third one was San Diego, maybe. And they're always trying to win. They're local owners. They're both owned by improv comedians. Will Ferrell with one, Drew Carey with the. Wait a minute, Drew Carey owns Seattle. Sorry, but he used to be an LA Galaxy fan, and and it's just like, shouldn't I? I'm just like, should I let go and just choose a club? But the answer is so far no, My
Yeah.
heart belongs to one, I think. My heart belongs to the New York Red Bulls. And I just have
Yeah.
to trudge along with those guys through thick or thin. And I don't know, for someone who's had multiple clubs in your life, tell me, what's that? Can you do that? How does that work?
That's the thing. I can't shake the fire. And
Right.
it's so, I mean, it's been a good, oh, over a decade at this point since we were interesting at all. I mean,
Hmm.
there was a brief moment about a half a season when after we signed Schweinsteiger that
Hmm.
there was a little bit of hope, and I
Hmm.
love how he embraced the city. But it's 13 years and two owners and two stadia and three logos and there's no reason that I should still care about them the way I do, and yet I can't help it. Now,
Yeah.
with all that said, then you've got, I've got a kid who does a lot of stuff in the Red Bulls youth programs. Not that he's an academy player, but they feels like that's how a lot of how they market is they reach out and they get try and get kids hooked. And he's absolutely hooked. And
Yeah.
uh, and so I love the Red Bulls through because I see them through his eyes, you know. And we go to enough matches, and I mean, there are players who catch your eyes and they make you happy. And there is a thing, I don't know if you feel this, Stefan, where the Red Bulls and Metro Stars had to sweat through the years when MLS was misery, and
Hmm.
they had to sweat through, and people came in the beginning, especially to the Metro Stars, and the football was ugly and people left. And then they're, on that turf at Giant Stadium, and their boots are melting, and they had to suffer through all of this to create a foundation for NYCFC to just come in and say, oh, here. and
Hmm.
uh and there's something about that will always yeah, even if it's, again, different owner, everything like that, but it's fans.
Right.
There's fans that have been through that level of foundation building that
Hmm.
that I really really appreciate. Um,
Amen, brother. Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny. That's what kind of what, because like I said, my usual co-host is an NYCFC fan.
right.
And
Yeah.
that's definitely where we differ. And it's funny here in LA. LA is such a great soccer town, by the way. LAFC is a hip thing. Everyone's got the jerseys, they got the hats on. You can talk LAFC. There's LAFC murals, and I love the fact that it became a hip thing. But like I go to more Galaxy games because the Galaxy are the New York Rebels of the LA market. They're out in the burbs, a little older. The
Hmm.
LAFC fans would say the same things like, "Yeah, the Galaxy never grabbed me, but LAFC grabbed me." And it's
Yeah.
like, well, tough. Soccer, man. Like we're in it for the soccer. So
Yeah.
the same with the Metro Stars and the Rebels fans. It's like they're in it for the sport. So they laid the groundwork for NYCFC and LAFC to build a hip downtown stadium and so get hip and all that stuff. But if it weren't for the Galaxy or the Red Bulls, none of that would have ever happened. And it's like, what are you rooting for? You're rooting for Flash. You're rooting for the sport. So that's, I guess, I'm preaching the choir here. So for all the newer fans, we're very appreciative of newer
Let's
fans.
just agree.
It's
We're
just
yeah.
I love the newer fans. When NYCFC came into town, I challenged myself. I went to NY because the Red Bulls were disappointing me at the time. I went to NYCFC games to test myself, and it just confirmed the fact that I'm a New York Red Bulls fan, like maybe even a harder Red Bulls fan. Just sending back to the Red
Mm,
Bulls again. But because NYCFC was fun, exciting, they were buying ads, it was popular, people were talking about NYCFC. Like for American soccer to be part of culture is a fun and new, exciting thing that MLS just does better and better as it moves forward. And when NYCFC came into town, I tested, but I ended up, like I said, I was just like, I don't know. Just the other
yeah.
thing about, in general, about the Red Bull fandom, talk about Red Bull fandom, and I think what I would love to see MLS improve in general is the New York Red Bulls stress youth development. You're talking about with your son and stuff. And to me,
Yeah.
that it was every MLS club should really stress youth development. There's no excuses why half of your lineup isn't straight from your academy. And Red Bull is one of the few clubs, along with the Philly. And NYCFC does a pretty decent job.
They
There's
do.
a handful of clubs. FC Dallas has a great academy. There are a handful of them as clubs that really do a good job leaning on their product, which is essentially, in my opinion, what the league is for, is to create and develop the domestic player, and it just seems in a league with 30 teams, like 25 of them are not doing a great job at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and there are people like, the Fire has, Gutierrez and Slunina came out of their academy, and
Mhm.
and that's great. And it does feel like it is not a consistent. Every year, there's a couple of academy players who end up making an impact for the Red Bulls, which is impressive. And uh,
Julian
and
Hall over the weekend. Or was it 2
right,
weekends ago when he got that late equalizer? Yeah,
yeah, right. It was 2 weekends, right? Yeah.
yeah, because this
He's
past week
just
with
another name.
Chicago,
He's
it was
just
right.
another young player
Mhm.
coming up, and you get the sense that there are more behind. And by the way, and then we should also add, not only is MLS doing a great job creating culture around the matches, USL has so
Yeah.
improved on all of that since then.
And here in LA, I mean, Angel City FC is the most popular soccer club in the city. I'd argue more popular than LAFC. I see
Wow,
more Angel City gear around than I see LAFC gear around here. And if you
yeah,
ever get a chance to go to Angel City FC game, do it because it is a blast. It's in the same stadium, packed. It's an event. People are so excited about Angel City, and the San Diego Wave do an excellent job as well down in San Diego.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really exciting what's going on right now.
yeah. It is. It is, and it's terrifying at the same time. But in that, structurally, we've got huge issues, and yeah, we can. I
So
don't know.
open
I don't know.
forum,
Maybe we
man.
can talk about those at another time.
Well, I
That's
was
all the
gonna say I'm
general
up to
stuff.
the only kind of big topic, and I just pulled this out of my rear end, is like how do MLS 1.0 clubs survive these days? That's sort
Yeah,
of the big topic I kind of wanted to touch on because especially with Chicago Fire and the New York Red Bulls, they both have 1.0 disease a little bit, and also the league, and it's just interesting. It's just there is a special committee that MLS has made to kind of address this. You look at your DC Uniteds and your Chicago Fires and New York Red Bulls and New England Revolutions, and just like the old school clubs, and they're not thriving. None of them are thriving.
yeah,
So I don't know. There's that. I'm also open to talk about whatever you want to talk about. If you got a big
yeah,
topic, lay it on me, man. Let's talk about it, brother. It's
yeah,
a lot. It's a
yeah.
lot.
Well, it's interesting too because I'm starting to see, or I feel like I'm starting to see the malaise that kind of has hit the Chicago fan base creep into a lot of clubs that came into the league as the exciting new groundbreaking game changing thing.
Hmm.
And I have a friend who moved to Atlanta. I never heard him speak about the game. He moved to Atlanta, and the next year
Right.
Atlanta United just took over the city,
Amazing.
and he became a season ticket holder. He's completely in it, and he's utterly, and talk about Carlos Bocanegra. He's not that favorable on the Carlos Bocanegra topic. Talk
Hmm.
about you know dispiritedness. I think the league, part of the issue is that the league has always tried to set up expansion clubs in such a way that they have a chance to succeed immediately. And that's
Hmm.
always felt good and looked good right in the beginning. And when you start at the top, there's only one way to go.
Right.
And I start to see, and I'm on the other part of my screen. I've got the table, or not the table right now. I have this weekend's results, and I'm seeing Toronto.
Hmm.
Toronto changed the
Hmm.
game when they came in,
Right.
right?
Right. Seattle.
Atlanta have
Hmm.
rough times. Seattle having rough times. Austin, if they weren't game changing, it was. It was something completely new in the league, something that created an awful lot of excitement. Um, and so I'm wondering if maybe one of the steps that needs to be taken is making it a little tougher to win
Hmm.
when you come in.
Hmm.
I don't know. That sounds.
Are you talking about like fewer playoff spots, that kind of thing? Like
Well,
literally the competition, or
the league could definitely use fewer playoff spots.
oh yeah, they just expanded it again for last year
Yeah,
and this year. I think.
yeah. It's just
Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten in last year. The Red Bulls, I think, because of that
right.
last spot, we were able to sneak in. Yeah, it's funny. My American soccer anxiety, because I'm OG and I always have a lot of
Mhm.
anxiety with my American soccer fandom. When I see brand new, exciting, full stadiums and teams, the first thought I always have is like, if they don't win soon, they're going to lose half of these guys. And just
Yeah.
like, and I'll be honest with you. So lately, they've done better. Like Atlanta still, if I'm not mistaken, Atlanta still sells pretty well, even though they haven't made the playoffs in 2 seasons. Could be wrong about that. Seattle still has a healthy crowd. You look at a Cincy, you look at a St. Louis, and you're like, God, I
Yeah.
hope these people still show up. The Austin
Mhm.
people have good crowds, and Austin has been kind of a train wreck since they've come in the league, I think. Or maybe it's a little unfair,
Yeah,
but
they
they
had a
haven't
great
really.
first season.
Yeah, they had
Or
a
I seem to remember they had a very good first season. Yeah, they were a playoff team.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, then maybe I'm being unfair. But no, that's my anxiety definitely spurns. But the newer clubs still definitely seem to hold a good crowd. And
Yeah.
I've been like bothering Bjorn about this because he's such a bogey team. I think the Columbus Crew are doing a really, really good job, kind of
Yes.
showing they're like the exception to the rule. A few years ago, they were on their deathbed, right? And
Right.
Garber was trying to move him to Austin, and Garber has been I've got all sorts of opinions on Garber, but if I didn't know any better, I'd say Garber's plan is to get rid of the 1.0 clubs and replace them with new clubs. I know with Chicago there was that news
Mm.
for a bit where wasn't there some in Chicago where they were trying to put a second franchise in Chicago, or they gave the rights to a USL club or something. There was something on with Chicago too a few years ago related
Mm.
to that, I think. But anyway, Columbus got themselves a new owner, thankfully, and the Haslams they built them a new stadium,
Right.
and then just totally revived. They went off, won the MLS Cup, and it was just like Columbus Crew was a club reborn.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to rebrand super heavy. It's still the Columbus Crew. It's still Columbus. It's still the Nordica. It's still the fans. But like they have revived themselves, and they are just one of America. They're like, in my opinion, with great American talent, a good mix of the American and international talent. They're like a perfect example of like a great American club that I'm a little jealous of.
Fair enough. Yeah. And on that note, we can add Kansas City into that category as well.
Right?
Uh,
Yeah.
New owners got got something together, engaged with the community, which I mean, that's something that you don't feel a lot of in my experience with MLS.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
um, and there's definitely an impact. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Columbus probably has done it best of anyone right now. So then the
Sporting
question is,
KC, Sporting KC, I think just needs a coaching change these days, if I'm not mistaken, because
yeah,
he's like the American Sir Alex Ferguson without any titles. He's just been, Sporting KC was back. Remember the Sporting KC Toronto games in the mid tens or whatever it was, 14 and 15.
that's
I think
right.
they played back each other, right? Or am I mixed? I know they played. It's all mishing and matching, but they had Sporting
Right.
KC had their prime in like 2014, 2015. I think since then they could use improvement. So I think they do need a fresh perspective from the coaching staff finally. But great organization. They have that great stadium they built with their fans. They built Blue Hell, I believe it's called. Or no, the blue, their version of the yellow wall, the
Yeah.
blue wall and stuff like that. No, and then and they were 100%. They're also, I think, in great shape as sort of a 1.0 club that still keeps himself hip and relevant. And now they've just been recharged with a Missouri neighbor,
Hmm.
St. Louis. Now they got these great Missouri derbies going on. So they got, the Midwest is a lot to be excited about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is Missouri the Midwest? Yeah, right?
Yes,
Ish?
absolutely.
Yeah, it's the Midwest. Okay.
And that's the thing. As a Fire fan, we should be having a big St. Louis rivalry,
Mhm.
and and there are definitely, there's definitely the core of fans for whom it is. It just yeah, it's just been tough. It's just been tough because we give away just way too many late goals.
You ta- What are your thoughts? I know. I mean, let's try to think. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts
it's tough to
on?
have a rivalry when you just know the outcome.
Tell me about it. I remember
Yeah.
the Jesse Marsh years at Red Bulls were really exciting, but the one thing you could always count on was 80th minute plus. If we were up 2-0, it was always going to be a 2-2 game. They just ran out of steam on the 80th minute. The last 10 minutes is for the other teams. Like, come at us, we're done. So, and Sandro Schwarz has done a good job being a lot more dynamic with the high press than Jesse Marsh was.
Yeah.
But let's talk Red Bulls for a bit. How the other sort of theme with this podcast is it good enough? And that's reference to the 1.0 clubs and reference to New York Red Bulls. Do you think the front office of the New York Red Bulls, because not 6 months ago, Marc de Grandpré came out and said, like, we're sorry, because they almost neglected the club for 2 years. It seemed like we were sort of forgotten for 2 years.
Yeah.
When Dietrich Mateschitz, the Red Bull CEO, was on his deathbed, we learned. So there's a lot of like transitional stuff happening and yada yada. But they came out at the beginning of last season. They're like, we're sorry. We're going to invest resources. We're going to invest money. We're going to compete with the best. And boop, boop, bop, 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 bop. And what that meant was they signed Emil Forsberg. That's essentially all that meant. Other than that, it's been business as usual. A couple Scandinavian youngsters. I mean, what else is new for the New York Red Bulls? And then a lot of their academy kids. So, and with Sandro Schwarz, I thought he was an excellent coaching hire. And I was a big fan of Troy Lesesne. I thought he earned his keep and he should have stayed as head coach. But Red Bull got rid of him and replaced him with some European rando. And I'm like, all right, I'm always suspect of that. But Sandro Schwarz has proven his keep, I feel. but I want to hear your opinions on Red Bull this year. Is it good enough?
Yeah.
Are they doing good enough?
The big question. I mean, yes, because it's significantly improved. And Sandro Schwarz to Troy Lesesne is a little bit like Jesse to Mike Petke, right? You have that someone. I agree. Troy Lesesne did a fantastic job. But he did a fantastic job just getting the Red Bulls into the playoffs, right?
Right.
Now you have someone who they go from surviving, which playoffs in MLS, that's surviving. You know, that's, do you at all have any sort of pulse? If you get, and I do, it's the one thing that drives me most crazy about the league, even beyond the promotion, relegation, the conferences and all that noise. It's just too easy to get into the playoffs. It just doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
So they kind of had a pulse, and now they feel like they're thriving a bit. So it's good. The question is, they're working on are the resources that de Grandpré is talking about, are they going into the training facility, right? Because they're working on a new training facility, right?
I think they just opened their new one this year, or is it coming? I know it was this year. Was it the beginning of this year, or is it next season?
Okay. No, it might be.
It's soon. It's either this season or next season. I want to say it was this season they moved into a new training facility, didn't they? Because they were in East Hanover for a long time, but they rented, I think, from a high school or something. But then they moved into Montclair or some community. I forgot where. And it's like, I believe it's a much bigger, better facility that I want to say they have ownership to. I should know this.
Yes, we should. I have been to the East Hanover facility, and you know, it was a bunch of kind of warehouses with some fields, you know, and I didn't get to go inside any of the buildings except to go to the bathroom, but it was warehouses and fields, right? And so, and an awful long drive to get to some warehouses and fields, right?
Right.
So if they've moved to Montclair, which is, for anyone watching, is not in the New York area.
I don't think it's Montclair. Let me Google it real quick. Sorry, you vamped.
Hey, thank you. Yeah. That's going to have a big impact. It's going to have an impact not only on the quality of training if they have their own space. It's going to have an impact on who they can bring in. You know, people when you're talking to players in Europe about coming and living and playing for New York, I don't think the picture in their head is warehouses and fields.
Right.
You know,
so it's in Whippany, New Jersey. Where it is.
Oh, okay.
So it's near, and it is this year. There's a lot of field state of the art and Pupupa. They are very excited about it. I think that did happen this year because they announced 2024 fall camp dates at the facility. So it must be Yeah, it must be going. Yeah, it's in Whippany, which I'd have to Google.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, sorry, I was interrupted. Yeah, the infrastructure upgrades are probably more facility based.
Yeah.
There's rumors of different players. I think there were soft rumors of what's his face, the German striker from Tot. The guy really fell off, but he was like Germany's best striker 3 or 4 years ago. His name escapes me at the moment. And then maybe also Yusuf Poulsen, but Yusuf Poulsen said no. And they were trying to send us some big guys. But I will say Emil Forsberg has been great when healthy. As of late, apparently he's been ghosting the team. There's a story of like he was supposed to be at a meet and greet, but he just didn't show up or something. So he is injured, and there's no clear timeline on when he's returning. Again, like Leo Messi, they're not sharing that information.
Yeah.
There is like a fan online said he asked him in person, and then Emil Forsberg's response was very soon. Is what he said out loud. So.
Okay.
Hoping it's coming in the next couple of weeks. I don't know, because we do need Emil Forsberg back. I think he's been the biggest key missing element to our success. It definitely, our downfall started when he stopped playing, I think.
Yeah. And I'm seeing Daniel Young
I was gonna say, we got
in the chat, noting as well that NYCFC needs a miracle. Yes. And that's all. Cushing's inconsistency is unacceptable, and thank you for pointing that out, Daniel. And that's the challenge with this league always, I think. And I don't know if it's Cushing. It's just the league is always changing, and whenever you think you know it, it changes. And I mean, it goes back to Forsberg and the players they're bringing in. And yes, Forsberg has landed reasonably well. That said, I'm wondering, if you're thinking of the ideal DP for either of the New York City squads, who are you thinking of? Like,
me personally,
what's the profile at least? Yeah.
Yeah, I like when they signed Dante Van Zier, I like the signing like that. For some of the big names, 9 times out of 10, they're here for a vacation, or their career is done, or they're a little too old, or they're with Royce and the Galaxy, it's very exciting. I'm going to go take a look, but I don't expect much from Royce other than coming off the bench. Like when LAFC won their league title, with Gareth Bale coming off the bench and Chiellini, they were just bench guys. They were just like mascots, if anything.
Yeah,
they weren't like the real players were Denny Bouanga. I'm jealous when I see a Denny Bouanga or a Cucho Hernandez or someone like that ripping up the league. That to me is an ideal DP. And in all fairness to New York Rebels, Dante Van Zier had the potential to be something like that. As far as New York Rebels legends, we've got Danny Royer, Bradley Wright Phillips. There was a guy named Luke Rogers, I believe his name. You remember Luke Rogers back in the day? He couldn't come back. Yeah. He couldn't come back because he was a criminal, and he got a visa exception for the first season, but then he broke another law. He got caught again, and he just couldn't. His visa was canceled, so he couldn't come back. But our greatest players, like as fun as Thierry Henry was, it was Bradley Wright Phillips was ripping up. And who was Bradley Wright Phillips before the New York Rebels? He was Sean Wright Phillips's forgotten brother playing in the lower leagues.
Yeah.
To me, those are ideal. Like my favorite DP in MLS history is Sebastian Giovinco. He destroyed Toronto FC. Whereas an Andrea Pirlo at NYCFC, I'd say his reviews are mixed at best. So. I think Emil Forsberg's doing himself a pretty good job, by the way, for what he is. And someone like a Leo Messi is also crashing that's destroying those stereotypes, and Luis Suarez. Like some players come and they can still play. But I'm really disappointed at Dante Van Zier. I gave him all season last year. He had a rough season. And I'm like, well, renovate, get ready for this season. And this season, him and even Elias Manuel, my decisions have been made. They can't finish for crap. They can't hit the broadside of a barn. I mean, they're not. Dante Van Zier is a $5 million a year player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's one of the highest paid players in the league, I guess, relatively. He's definitely the second highest paid player on the club, if I'm not mistaken. So we need more from Dante Van Zier, don't we?
Yeah.
That was the marketing ask from Daniel Young. Pirlo and Lampard brought more butts this season. Totally. Just like a Chiellini and a Gareth Bale. Great marketing tools. But is Emil Forsberg a real marketing tool for the New York Rebels? I don't know.
Well, and Pirlo and Lampard did to a point. That sells one ticket. I shouldn't say it. It sells a ticket one time. And then when folks show up and see them, kind of jogging and hanging out, uh, I don't know if it does more damage than it does good. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
and
remember when I went to Red Bull for a Chicago game and Schweini was there and I was there to see him and a whole bunch of Germans were there to see him. And that was their one experience. They got on the train, they left, and I overheard all sorts of conversations. And they were necessarily negative, but it was very much like I don't know, it was much of like, well, this is what's like or something. And they went back and they probably never went back again.
right,
So yeah, it's always got mixed results.
it's
And
yeah,
yeah,
it's
just
the emotional preparedness for what you're going to go through. And by the way, Daniel Young, I see you're dropping in that NYCFC can only put 20,000 at Yankee Stadium, 19,000 at Citi Field. I believe Miami's coming to town this week, right?
with a healthy Messi. Are they playing this
Yes.
weekend? Oh yeah,
Is
that's
it?
going to be a big one.
Yeah.
Oh, because they promised, I think, refunds for folks if he was going to be injured,
I have
I
an odd
believe.
feeling that we'll see a crowd of bigger than 20,000 for that one.
Oh yeah, it's on Saturday, September 20th. Daniel Young, you heading to the game? He's probably heading to the game. I think he's a season ticket holder, right? Daniel Young? I believe he's a season ticket holder. No, amazing. So tell me about your thoughts on Red Bulls. Are you excited? So you said they it is good enough. They have improved, which is true. They
Yeah.
limped in the playoffs this year. They're confidently in fourth place. They're going to hopefully finish the regular season with a home playoff series, which we
Yeah.
haven't had in a while. Usually it's been limp in and then we go visit Columbus to get knocked out or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But this year we're going to host a 3-game series, and in the playoffs anything can happen. So tell me your thoughts on the New York Red Bulls this year.
Yeah. You've mentioned it, much improved, and it's exciting to watch. It's exciting to be I don't want to say be a part of. We'll get to be a part of it this weekend. It's exciting, when my kid's not upset after a match. That's a big deal, so that's great. And is it good enough? It is, yes, for now. There's definitely another step that needs to be taken, because as good as the Red Bulls are, I don't think anyone's expecting them to win the league or get to the final, even really get past the Final Four, right?
Yeah, that would be surprising.
Yeah. So there's
They have this
definitely another
long-term.
step that needs to be taken. Yeah.
They have this long-term vision, but the thing is, New York Red Bulls does not. My big criticism: they don't retain players long enough. Whenever the contracts are up, they always release them on a free. Maybe they sell them. They do re-sign some players, like we saw that, I think, with Sean Nealis this year. But then when alumni come back, like a Tim Ream or whoever, they're never interested in bringing alumni back. And I think that'd be great for everybody, for a Tim Ream to come back, or for anybody. I know, just there were a few examples of people coming and going. And even Caden Clark, they're just like, no, thanks, someone else can grab up. But they export players, they don't bring them back. So that leads to a little bit of a player factory. And are they trying to create a winning 11 like with John Tolkien? If they sell him over the winter time, which it looks like they are going to do, and that's appropriate, does that communicate the fact that they're building to win a title? I mean, I don't know. To me, I'm very suspect of that. I think it'll always be like, oh, we're building for the future. It's like, well, you've been building for the future since 2009. When's the future coming? The future's got to arrive at some point, right? So
yeah. and since they sort of switched the model, since they let go of Henri and Tim Cahill and Marquez, that's been the idea. We're gonna achieve with youth and energy and and coordinated pressing, and it's gotten them so far.
But not far enough.
There's an ingredient that's missing there, and it's really frustrating.
It's an ingredient that Philadelphia Union seemed to have.
Yeah.
They're essentially under the same model, but doing it better. And I think they have the one or two differences that I meant. Like they had Alejandro Bedoya. They had, I think, Aguchi Onyewu came in there, or Mo Adu maybe. I don't know. Maybe Aguchi did play there. They're open to bringing those veterans back. And I think leading that sort of veteran leadership there. And I think the Philly Union, I look at them with jealousy, because I'm just like, they're doing what we're doing, but they're actually succeeding. They haven't won a title, but they made, the big story between them and LAFC was LAFC spends the money, but Philly Union spends their money in their academy. And that's how they got to the final. And they're spitting out, your Brendan Aaronsons and your Paxton Aaronsons and all these, and your Kevin Sullivans and all these all these future American stars. In my opinion, look at the Philly Union, and I'm just like, New York Red Bulls, they're doing it. So what's your excuse? Like, why was Matt Miazga or Tim Ream not even considered for a return? Why do you get rid of Dax and Luis Robles and Sasha Kless? Why do you get rid of your captains the minute they turn 29? It's like, you need to have some 30-year-olds involved. You can't just all be. You can't, like, what's this? Was it Gary Neville? No. Gary Lineker said you win nothing with kids. I think is one of his quotes or something like that. You need some sort of a mix. And I feel like a team like Philly Union is a little bit better than New York Red Bulls, personally.
Yeah. Well, and you've when you're talking about it, it's making me think of the take from another sport, the Patriots model, right? And they would move players on consistently, regularly, and they would keep the one guy, right? The guy that they were building everything else around. And different sport, everything. I guess it kind of worked for them. Yeah. And you're right. And also, you flashed me back just now to when Chris Rolfe came back to the Chicago Fire. He'd kind of come up as a developmental player. He's one of those guys making $17,000 a year until he started just scoring bangers, and got himself a transfer to Denmark. Injuries, etc. It didn't work out. When he came back to the Fire, it felt so good as a fan to provide a home for this guy that you really believed in and had kind of gone through a rough situation. And the Red Bulls have a
Mike Grella would be a New York Red Bulls example of that, I think. But I love those guys, and we need to be way more. And that's the point of a hometown club, is you come back, how many times did Carlos Tevez had to go back to Boca Juniors? You always got to go back sometimes. And I think the New York Red Bulls puts out so much alumni. It's like, be there to grab them back, because it helps us in the long run as well. I think with fans and with winning. A great Chicago Fire player I always miss and think what could have been? Harry Shipp.
Oh,
remember him? He scored 4 goals against New York Red Bulls in 20 minutes or something like that. Do you remember that game? Yeah. It was like a Chicago Fire Red Bulls game, and I think from the beginning of the second half to like the 66th minute, Harry Shipp, I think, scored a hat trick. He scored 4 goals or something crazy like that. Yeah. And he was just such a bright light. And then you just don't hear. I think he went to Seattle. He just became a squad player, right? I think he retired a few years ago.
Yeah, he was kind of a squad player, and he retired very early in his career. He's definitely still in his 20s. It was right after Seattle won MLS Cup, and he's like, I'm going to Northwestern Business School.
Right, that's right.
I do expect we're going to hear his name as an executive in MLS at some point. That I think that's the path he's on, but. He had such an impact in that New York game. New York journalists were always talking about him, or at least for the next couple of years. There was a constant, when will Harry Shipp get called up to the USA? When will he get put in I think he did get a cap or 2 in friendlies
for
the January camp. That I'm not sure.
I don't see any play camps, but I'm sure he was invited to a January camp at least once or twice.
It's interesting. He's yet another Fire player who showed tremendous promise for a moment.
Well, maybe Harry Shipp, we're shipping Shipp to replace Georg Heitz as perhaps the new player executive. My old co-host told me the rumor was Greg Berhalter is going to be the new sporting director of Chicago Fire. I was like, okay. I'm curious. Like a sporting director, I'm sure you want to coach again at some point. I'm surprised Greg Berhalter wasn't up for the San Diego job.
You would think he was.
Yeah.
Right?
At least we got an interview or something.
And he's been...
Anywho, what were you going to say? Sorry.
No, he's been a reasonably successful club coach on the MLS level. There's no reason to think that he couldn't do a job for San Diego. Especially, what would everyone say about Greg Berhalter? What was his strong point? It was building culture, developing
Right.
culture. You have a brand new team, brand new franchise. We'll use the term in MLS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would have been a very interesting hire, and I'd have been very curious about that.
And Greg's got a point to prove, so definitely he's definitely in it to win it.
Yeah.
But I'm not executive. But like I said, I'm not the Harry Ship of the world. I didn't get an MBA, so let's listen to this podcast. Nothing I can do for you. Well, I've kept you so long, Pat. Thanks for being on here with us. Thanks for being honorary Schnitzel boy. Do you have anything else you really want to share as far as get the platform, as far as MLS or U.S. soccer or anything right now?
Boy, yeah, where to begin? I'll say this. I've been watching more and more USL because it has the vibe that MLS had when I started going to matches.
Yeah.
And so if you've got and USL is kind of everywhere until MLS comes and says, "Oh, you're successful here. We're going to plop a franchise on top of you." But if, like, my hometown now has a USL club with a soccer specific stadium, and I can't even, downtown for that matter, I can't even describe that. So if you have access and you've been following soccer, get to your USL club. It's there you go. What is that? Orange County?
Orange County, baby. I got two. I was at a soccer bar, and an Orange County rep came up to me. I won some raffle, and he gave me 2 free tickets. And I've been there before. It's a cute little stadium down Orange County. I'm going when they play New Mexico United to see if maybe Bob Odenkirk will be in the stands.
There you go.
As you know, because I'm a Hollywood man now. And Bob Odenkirk, I believe, I know he's a fan. He might even be a part owner of the New Mexico United. I don't know. No, but I have a real romanticism to old school MLS. I look on it with real rose-colored glasses, and the old big soccer days and the empty, Naperville where the Lions were on the field, and what's the one that Dallas played in? Dallas Burn. They played in
Dragon Stadium.
Dragon Stadium.
Not just the lines, but the painted end zone, and jeez,
and it was turf. And I remember watching the Chicago Fire at Naperville. And during the game, they just cut to the stands to interview DeMarcus Beasley's mom and his brother Jamar, or I believe it was Jamar. And they're just like, "Hey, how are things?" It was just like there's a game going on, and and it's just so I just look back on that with such romanticism. And USL definitely still has that charm with it, and 100% support your local club. What's your home? You're from? Remind me, are you from Colorado originally?
I grew up in Colorado Springs.
So it's the Colorado Switchbacks then, right?
Yeah. And they've got a
amazing
stadium, like right downtown. Yeah. It's breathtaking. It's breathtaking just to go to that 6,000 seat stadium, right under Pikes Peak and everything like that. And it's even more breathtaking being a guy who grew up in Colorado Springs and thinking, we've got a stadium here. We've got a team, a full, professional team. It's amazing. And long may it continue to grow.
Yes, I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. They have North Carolina Football Club down there. It's amazing. And back in the old days, I loved the Charleston Battery operation. How they built like the first ever stadium, like in '93 or something. Yeah, USL soccer and whatever it wants to brand itself at every 2 or 3 years, it has it's a new name of the league. But whatever it is, support your local soccer, support your local club. Daniel Young, that's right. There's Brooklyn. Yeah. Brooklyn's got a USL team, right? Weren't they going to affiliate with NYCFC? Maybe I read that.
Maybe they're going to be down like Coney Island, at least to begin, which is going to be tricky. But perhaps I will see you at a match, Daniel.
I used to go to Coney Island because I lived off the D line. I was in Brooklyn, and the fact that the Cosmos played MCU Park, I should have gone to those games. I can't believe I missed it. What a fun day! You go to the beach. You get a hot dog, you ride the rides, then you go to a ballpark, you watch a soccer game. It's so much fun. So much fun. All right, Pat, Herr Schnitzel, thank you very much for being on the podcast, the first of many. I'm glad we finally got you on. Thank you for bearing with us. Let me get our outro music with all the tech here.
Thanks for having me, Stefan.
Oh, anytime, my friend. There we go. That's our outro. Otherwise, tschüss. Bis nächste Woche. Till next week.